Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are tearing down something highly unconventional. We've actually got our hands on the internal, June 2026, institutional blueprint and master knowledge file for a Washington, D.C. based nonprofit called CARO. And just for some context, that stands for Care for Assets, Resources, and Obligations. Now, let me be clear right out of the gate. This is not your standard glossy corporate brochure. No way. What we are looking at is an intensely disciplined operational manual. It dictates step by step exactly how they plan to fundamentally measure and fix broken governance systems around the world. So, we're going to deconstruct the whole shebang, their mission, their strict internal mechanics, and of course, their highly audacious master plan.
Here is the roadmap for today. First up, the governance design problem. Second, Equitism and the Fairness Index. Third, the 868K Foundation. Fourth, the institutional architecture. And finally, number 5, the 12-month master plan. Let's jump right in.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the governance design problem, and specifically, why systems structurally fail. To really grasp what CARO is doing, you have to understand the massive question that its founder, A.N.M. Nuruddin, carried with him. He carried this all the way from his childhood in Hafizari, Chittagong, right to Washington, D.C. He was looking at democratic systems globally and noticed a really persistent, frustrating pattern. He asked, why do government systems keep failing the exact same people in the exact same ways across totally different countries and decades? And his conclusion is absolutely crucial. The failure wasn't an accident. It wasn't just a streak of bad leaders or corrupt politicians. The answer, as he puts it, was architectural. The systems are failing structurally, by design. He actually coined the term legal injustice for this, which is basically democratic failure achieved through formally legal institutional mechanisms. The system itself, right down to the blueprints, is the problem.
Moving right along to Section 2, Equitism and the Fairness Index. This is where we shift from just talking about philosophy to digging into some hard data.
Because, CARO realized pretty quickly that just identifying a problem isn't going to fix it. You can't just complain about unfairness. You have to solve it operationally. So their answer lies in a very specific concept they call equitism. Now, in CARO's world, equitism is not an ideology. It's not a political campaign. It is a strict design principle. They believe governance systems must be structurally fair, and not just as some nice rhetorical aspiration. It has to be an enforceable constitutional mandate. They actually champion what they call the meta right to structural fairness. Basically, that means every single citizen has a fundamental right to live under a system literally designed to be fair to them. But here's the catch. To enforce fairness, you got to be able to measure it first. And that brings us to this wildly specific number, 1.74. To actually measure this equitism concept, CARO built a 25-question empirical instrument known as the Fairness Index. They took this tool and deployed a pilot in Bangladesh, which, by the way, made it the world's very first empirical measurement of structural governance fairness in a transitional democracy. Out of a maximum perfect score of 5.0, Bangladesh scored an overall fairness index of just 1.74. Ouch. That completely takes us out of the realm of theory. It is a measured empirical instrument showing a severe structural failure. When you peel back the layers on that 1.74 score across the 5 key governance domains, based on their 86 verified respondents, you see a highly consistent pattern. Everything is basically flashing red in what they classify as majority unfair. But I really want to highlight D4 right in the middle there, public services and welfare. It plummets to an incredibly low 1.44 out of 5. That right there is the strongest signal of unfairness in the entire pilot. It tells us with laser precision exactly where the system is failing its citizens the hardest.
Which brings us nicely to Section 3, the 868K Foundation. We are going to look at the surprising reality of the human engine behind all of this.
Because you're probably wondering, who exactly paid for all this global tracking? Who funded the research and the simulation building? Well, let's look at the numbers before a single dollar of institutional money ever hit their bank accounts. The contrast here is mind-blowing. Institutional funding received? $0. None. Organizational value mobilized? Over $868,000. CARO calls these their locked figures, and they rigorously mandate their use in all their documents. It creates this amazing dynamic tension, honestly. It shows the sheer grassroots sweat equity required to build their massive global goal. I mean, they built a book, an index, and an entire simulation platform called Player One, completely on volunteer commitment and pro bono work. So how do they actually prove that grassroots effort? Well, they track it meticulously. This number, 13,670, is the strictly documented amount of volunteer and contracted hours that have driven the organization forward. They log literally every single hour. To put that into perspective, nearly 4,000 of those hours are just from the founder alone. This level of insane documentation is exactly what backs up that massive $868,000 valuation.
And you know, all that labor isn't just happening in a vacuum. It translates to genuine real-world reach. 2,259. That is the number of verified participants they have actually activated on the ground, spread out across 211 parliamentary constituencies in Bangladesh. They've built this incredible network of campus ambassadors and community members to act as their ground truth network. They're the ones actually out there collecting that fairness index data.
All right, moving to Section 4, the institutional architecture. Let's look under the hood of this well-oiled machine.
We really need to examine how all of this energy channels into the internal workings of CARO. Because let's be real, tracking this much data across the globe without massive institutional funding requires absolute ironclad discipline. They operate on a globally distributed remote contractor model governed by something they call the two-layer model. Think of it like a house. The programs, like their volunteer empowerment program or the campus ambassadors, those are just the front door. It's how you get your identity. It's how you get in. But the departments, like operations, IT, or the global governance lab, those are the rooms. That is where the actual heavy lifting daily work happens.
And the rules inside those rooms, they are intense, almost military-level intense. Their internal blueprint reads like a strict mandate. Hit a roadblock, you never go silent. You have exactly 24 hours to post your constraints. You have to use those locks figures we talked about exactly as they are written. No rounding up to sound better, no guessing. Oh, and here's a fun one. All AI content generation must use Claude, never ChatGPT. Sorry, OpenAI, but that's a hard rule. If you're doing institutional outreach, you BCC the founder, always. And the ultimate golden rule across their entire Slack workspace, no output equals no standing. Boom. This extreme accountability isn't just a broad idea. It trickles all the way down to the specific people leading these departments. The blueprint literally has custom AI system prompts mapped out for each of these leads. So, for example, when Samia, their research lead, or Abdullah over in IT logs in to do their job, their operational targets, their past working patterns, and their exact deliverables are being systematically tracked and managed. It is an ecosystem specifically engineered to absolutely crush the habit of strong initiation but weak follow-through. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, the 12-month master plan, securing the NESD grant to reach global scale.
So we've seen the core problem, their specific metric, the incredible sweat equity, and the internal discipline. Now, what is CARO actually going to do with all of this over the next year? Well, their immediate focus for June 2026 is locking down a $100,000 grant from the National Endowment for Democracy. But how they frame this is absolutely vital. They are explicitly telling the NED that this is not startup capital. They're basically saying, hey, we've already mobilized over $868,000 in real value. We built a system that works. They're asking for scale funding to pour gas on an engine that is already running beautifully. And they have locked in 3 very precise objectives for that 12-month program. Number 1, scale the measurement. They want to blow up the fairness index from those initial 86 responses to over 1,000 verified responses. Number 2, deploy the leadership pipeline. They plan to place exactly 300 highly trained Equitism leaders, literally one in every single parliamentary constituency across Bangladesh. And number 3, publish the accountability baseline. They are going to synthesize all of this raw ground data and behavioral simulation data into Bangladesh's first ever annual governance fairness report.
You know, the founder actually wrote something really striking in the foreword of this blueprint. He said, an organization that cannot explain itself cannot scale itself. Well, I think it's safe to say we've just seen an organization that has documented every single hour, every procedure, and every metric right down to the decimal point. And that leaves us with a truly provocative question, doesn't it? If an organization can explain itself this meticulously and operate with this level of intense, unyielding structural discipline, is this actually the ultimate key to finally fixing global governance? It's a lot to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer, and definitely keep your eyes peeled on how CARO's blueprint unfolds out there in the real world. Catch you next time.